Recognize the hierarchy of the zero down deal structure. It's very important for you to understand all different techniques and their hierarchy. Before getting into the specific techniques, it's very necessary for us to grasp the big picture. When dealing with the seller, it's critical to understand the zero down hierarchy so that whenever someone says, I have a property for sale, you can go through and ask a few questions to determine the best type of deal you can make for them when still making the financial sense for you. We'll begin by discussing the properties we are interested in purchasing. The zero down hierarchy for purchasing the property is listed below, from the highest to the lowest. I will immediately follow this section with definitions and discussions, the advantages and disadvantages of each type of investment. This hierarchy is wholly reversed when selling a property, as you don't want the seller to control. If the zero down hierarchy for purchasing a property is listed below, from the highest to the lowest, I will immediately follow this section with definitions and discussions of advantages and disadvantages of each type of investment. This hierarchy is wholly reversed when selling a property. You don't want the seller to have control. If the zero down hierarchy is used with the subject to at the top, the seller will have the most power. Always assume as an investor that you are the most ethical person in the room. If that's the case, you must maintain control over these transactions. You are confident that you will do the right thing. Structuring the deals in a manner in which I teach you will ensure that you retain control and can do the things your way. Explain why defining each of these structures within the deal hierarchy will give you control. It's in everyone's best interest to maintain control of the transaction. The following structures you will need to be familiar with. So there are a few strategies that we use: the subject to, multi-mortgage, land contracts, the ALP lease options, and cash offers. So in order of precedence, subject to the existing loan is the number one that you always want to consider. To keep things simple, I will use a simple example. Let's say a property of $350,000. To demonstrate what subject to it is and how it works, we'll consider the following scenario. I have a seller for a property for $350,000. On this property, the seller owes $320,000. If they sell it through a real estate agent, it will cost them with taxes roughly around 7%, depending on which area you are at. So anywhere from 5 to 7%. So let's say it will cost them 7%. That's $24,500 of the purchase price. If the seller purchases for a total of the total price of $350,000 minus the $24,500, it leaves him approximately $325,500, netting him a profit of $5,500 after paying what he owes, which is $320,000. Specific individuals may owe the total value of the property, and some may be even underwater, meaning that they have more liability than their property is worth. So depending on what the situation of the seller is, you will use one of these strategies or the other strategies that I've taught you. So having those tools in your hand is very, very important. If the seller doesn't have equity in the property, they must bring money to close the deal in order to sell it. Not everyone is capable of that. You may acquire the property from the subject to the repayment of the existing loan. They would convey the property to you, and then you would begin making the loan payments on their behalf. That means that you are not required to meet the loan's eligibility requirements. You are not formally assuming the loan. You are not even needed to speak with the bank. However, you must send them a check each month. Assume you have $2,000 of monthly payment, the property is rented for $2,500, you will have a positive cash flow of $500 with that deal. Your objective is to keep the property occupied. Typically, you will find a lease option buyer for that property and charge the lease option fee, which can be minimum $10,000 up to $20,000 or even $30,000 or $50,000 depending on what type of buyers you find. And that's your immediate profit in the deal, plus the monthly cash flow. The seller deeds the property to you subject to transactions. You're going to assume the responsibility for the loan payments within 30 to 60 days of taking over. This provides you with additional time to locate a lease option buyer, or what we call tenant buyer. That buyer would pay you one-time lease option fee in addition to first and last month's rent, and you can begin making the payment for the rent and the profits from the lease option fee. At this point, you have no money, no credit, no risk in this transaction. If you default on the transaction in any case, you violate this agreement with the seller. While this is not something that you want to do, you also have no legal ramifications or obligations, and thus this will not harm your credit if you do so. And if you ever find yourself in a situation where you cannot make the payments on a property, you do not want to keep the property and collect the rent only to be unable to make a payment. That's a deception. However, if you cannot make the payments, you should contact the seller and explain them your situation. Look, I'm unable to make the payment. My tenant has vacated promise. I'm unable to continue in that manner. I'm unable to find another person to do so. By the way, this does not occur ever, but if it does happen, this is the way you should do it. By the way, if it does get vacant, you can seek out another tenant buyer or collect the lease option fee. It's nothing to be afraid of. Additionally, if you set aside some funds for your lease option fee, you should be fine. That's what subject to means. This is the most secure way to hold the property, by owning the deed and having it in your name, so they cannot take it away from you. Your home is repossessed. The only person who can repossess the property from you is the mortgage company, the bank. Naturally, the state may claim it from the mortgage company if you default on your property taxes. Cash flow issues can arise with the subject to property transactions, so caution is advised, but they can be highly profitable. Flipping deals enables you to earn a good living, but owning the property allows you to become wealthy. Possessing 30, 40 properties, if you purchase them subject to, is an admirable goal. You start earning big amounts of money from your properties and flip deals. I have contributed my TFSA, or in the US you call it Roth IRA, with cash and subject to properties. A Roth IRA or TFS is a beautiful thing because it's after tax money, which means I will not be required to pay any taxes on them when I withdraw the funds after retirement. I also do not pay any taxes on any income I earn while they are there. You don't need to pay taxes on the funds before depositing them to IRA or RSP. Therefore, if you have that much income coming on that money, it makes more sense for you to invest in Roth IRA or TFSA than a traditional IRA or RRSP. Multi-mortgages are the second in hierarchy. Multi-mortgage is the next level in the zero-down hierarchy. This is a structure you would use if the seller owns the property outright or has a very little mortgage on it. You can also take the deed with multi-mortgage. Assume the property is worth $350,000, but the seller owes only $150,000 on it. He's willing to sell on the terms, but he's not willing to sell it for $150,000. He says, I'm not looking for you to take over my payments. I'm looking for you to take over my equity. and I will take on terms. However, I'm seeking 300,000 for the property. Thus, we have him deed us the property subject to, and now we are back on the deed, putting us in the most vital control of the property possible, which means there will be a first mortgage of the bank, which is 150,000, and his second of 150,000. Additionally, we'll have him place a second note on the property. We make him the beneficiary of the note and us the one who is borrowing the money. So we are borrowing 150 from him, means 150,000 from him to purchase the property. That means we have a note and a mortgage, or a trust deed if you have it in a living trust for 150,000 on that property. We're going to pay off that note. We are seeking long-term commitment, because if you are going to do something like that, you want to be sure it makes sense. Do not issue a 5 or 7 year note. Instead, give it 15 or 30 year note that amortizes completely over that period. No balloon payment. Ascertain that the interest rates as low as possible, preferably 0%. We strive for, although achieving 0% is not always possible, but it's always our goal. You can normally agree to 3 to 5% range, which is pretty common. Why people would do something like that? The reason for that can be that they have a capital gains on which they will end up paying taxes. So they want to drag the capital gains by re-lending that money to you as vendor take back. So by doing so, now they have extended the time period over which they will pay the capital gains. So basically they will earn majority of it or some of it from you and buy the extra time to pay those capital gains. Now you have acquired the property, you must make the first and second mortgages. Your payment will approximately be same if you are taking the property subject to. We rarely use multi-mortgages. What would typically be do in the situation when a seller asserts, I want my equity? We advise them, why don't they refinance the property and withdraw the equity? They will obtain 80% value of the property through refinance, and then we will assume the responsibility for it subject to the new loan and make payments on it. That's how we obtain these properties in this manner. I understand this might seem a little bit crazy, and for those of you who had never witnessed this before, you might be thinking, oh, this is nuts. Nobody is going to do this. This is something I have personally done tens of times, and my students have accomplished this hundreds of times, and I've witnessed it repeatedly. But it happens. People may not want to pay the refinance cost. People may not want to go through the hassle of refinancing the property. People do not want to pay for bigger mortgage. They would rather lend that money to you at a small percentage, whatever may be agreed upon, and not go through that hassle of getting refinance. Or they may not qualify for a mortgage. A lot of times what I've witnessed is that people do not qualify for a high mortgage. Now they have an equity in the house with which they are stuck to, and if they sell it, immediately they pay capital gains on it. And if they do multiple mortgages like we have discussed here, then they can avoid the capital gains. They can still make a good return on the money that's there. And so that's why a lot of people do multi-mortgages. Clause due on sale. Will the bank object to transfer title? We are discussing the transferring title without transferring a mortgage. Let's discuss the next potential stumbling block, the due on sale clause. 99.9% of the mortgages contain the due on sale clause, which states that if you, the borrower, transfer your title right to the property in any way, the lender has the right to declare the loan entirely due and payable, and accelerated and on-demand repayment. If you cannot repay the loan, they will have a right to foreclose on your home. And I recall thinking years ago, oh no, this could be really bad. I understand it could be troublesome if you find yourself in that situation. However, I have done this more frequently over the year. I have grown less concerned about this issue because it's never happened to me or anyone I know. The Bank of Montreal called me not long ago. I had purchased a subject to property and been paying for it for about 3 years, and they said, we noticed that the borrower paid and now you are making the payment. We want you to understand that you are responsible for transferring the loan into your name. I replied, no, that's not how I work. And then she added, well, if you don't do it, we will have to call the loan due and foreclose, and we're going to file a default notice. I responded, I understand. If you believe that's the best course of action, you have within your rights to do so. But if I want you to understand that if you file notice of default, the day I receive that, I'm going to cease making payments. She replied, I'm sorry, but that's what we must do. After a few minutes, she called me back. Oh, I spoke to my supervisor and he advised to continue making the payments and informed you that we will not find NOD. And I have maintained those payments. That was a couple of years ago or so ago. And you can see, I don't believe this is ever a serious issue that cannot be resolved because the bank hates seeing their mortgages being in default. And especially if you've been paying their mortgage on time for quite some time, they can see your history. They can see that you've been paying on time. And now they're less likely to recall the mortgage. And even if they recall the mortgage, what happens is you have a notice period, you have time within which you could always go back and refinance. It's always good to be ready in case something like that happens, but I've never seen it happen. I've never heard it happen with any of the people that I know. So I think it's good to be ready, good to be prepared, but it's great to use this technique. And if your payments are on time, so I normally suggest my students to make automatic payments so that there's no late payment, there's no default, or there's no any delay in the payments, so the bank will not even notice. And the other thing that I suggest is have a property management agreement, because in case the bank asks why are you making the payments, you can say I'm managing the property. But in case they do search for the title, and that's when you do talk to, like I have mentioned here, and then wait for their reaction. And 99% of they will not take the mortgage into default because they will be shooting themselves into the foot. Now let's consider this situation. If it does develop into a problem, assume the bank does not budge the next time. The majority of the properties you are purchasing subject to do not have a lot of equity. What you are doing is obtaining some cash flow from them, as well as the lease option fee, not to mention the depreciation due to the reduced tax liability and appreciation of the property's value, and hopefully a small monthly down payment on the note. As a result, you don't lose much. If the time passes and you accumulate significant amount, then the bank wishes to foreclose. All you have to do is put the property on the market and sell it and withdraw the funds. They will take longer to foreclose than you will take to sell it. And to keep in mind that they are not foreclosing on you but on the property. It does not affect your credit. They have no agreement with you that could be detrimental to you. Now let's go over everything one more time. Now we have the subject to, which is our top priority in hierarchy. And if I own a property that's subject to, I can sell it via multiple mortgage, land contract or lease option or cash. I'm in charge. I can sell it however I want. The following stages, multiple mortgages which is subject to plus a note, is something that I can accomplish in the same manner because I can retain control of the deed. As a result, I can sell it as a subject to or multi-mortgage or land contract or lease option or a cash deal. The lease option is the third in the hierarchy of the zero down structure. The lease option, or we refer to as the rent deals, is the next level of hierarchy in the zero down structures. The lease option is the property purchase option. This option is valid for a specified time. You make the payments during that time, thus you are tenant and subject to eviction. Avoid lease options if you intend to keep the property or if you want to retain control of the transactions. Rather than that, use one of the more robust structures like transfer title. On the other hand, selling through lease option weakens your buyer's position. You would have an easier time getting rid of them if they defaulted. For the rent deals or for sale by owner FSBO, sellers are primary marketing source. We contact them because we know one of three of them will respond affirmatively. When asked, would you consider selling your home, rent to own or rent to buy rather than outright? That's typically because they have no luck selling the property. 85% of the FSBOs will not sell. They will either remove the property from the market or list it with a real estate agent. Lease options legislations are implemented in a lot of states or provinces. There's no problem doing lease options, but some states do have problems like Texas. So let's discuss the Texas lease option legislation and implementation. Texas enacted a new lease option legislation a few years ago. They were having difficulties because when the lease option period expired, many illegal immigrants purchased the property and the sellers refused to allow the buyers to exercise their options. The tenants had limited options due to the lack of citizenship or fear of deportation. The state recognized this trend and enacted a new legislation that effectively stated that we no longer want people doing lease options unless they do it in a certain way. When that legislation passed, we were forced to alter the way we conduct business in Texas. In Texas, we are permitted to offer 6-month lease option only. Everything we do is identical to what I'm teaching you here. All advertising, all marketing, everything is similar. However, rather than a 3-year lease, it will be a 6-month lease option. That will convert to a land contract after 6 months. And if they want to make payment on time, then the land contract will expire after 1 year, 2 years, or however long you desire. However, the advantage is that after a year, the buyer can refinance a land contract. That means that they can refinance without making a down payment, which makes things a little easier for them. It's always easier obtaining financing for a refinance than getting a purchase. Additionally, Texas requires only 30 days to terminate a land contract, which is faster than any other state. As a result, I believe they shot themselves in the foot with that. The legislation is not accomplishing what they intended, but in its place, we must work with it. The fourth in the hierarchy is the cash offers, assignable cash offer. It's always preferable to sell a property on terms rather than cash. If you want to sell a property for money or total market value, you should work with a real estate agent or learn how to sell effectively and with high profit margins like we teach. A real estate agent is more likely to obtain more money than you can get on your own if you don't know how to sell a property. You can't sell it out for cash as an FSBO without selling it on terms or significantly below market value unless you are uniquely in a unique market situation. In line with the National Association of Realtors, 80 to 90% of the FSBO transactions fail in a healthy market. They must either list their property with an agent or withdraw it from the market entirely. That means if you want to sell your property for cash or premium, you have to list with an agent or sell the property yourself, but learn it how to. The other way to sell the property for cash is to drastically reduce the value, which you should avoid unless you're desperate, as it makes no sense if there is another way. I purchase a large number of properties below market value and typically buy them from banks these days due to abundance of incredible foreclosures or pre-foreclosures. I'm purchasing them in cash and I have the money that I need to invest and I put them into the retirement accounts as well. Analysis. Let's review the zero-down structure hierarchy once more time and consider the exit strategies. You can sell subject to, multi-mortgage, lease option, or you can sell it for cash. You can also sell for multi-mortgages, lease option, and cash. Or you could sell for lease options and cash. Or you could sell it lease option with the option to sell for cash. As you can see, the hierarchy of the structure has significant impact on how you buy and, when used properly, provides you with additional options for selling. The more exit strategies that you have, the easier and safer it's going to be for you. So it would help if you had as many selling options as possible, because your initial strategy may fail. And you must ensure that you have abundance of exit strategies, and there are numerous ways to structure a deal to facilitate the transfer of these properties.